What's up, guys? I'm CJ Pearson. Welcome to Family Matters. Let me start here. The liberal media didn't just forget about black conservatives. They erased us intentionally because they knew if people saw us, if people saw that we were out here proud and unafraid, it could spread because courage is contagious. And the one thing Democrats fear more than losing power, well, is losing control of us. But here's the thing. They couldn't stop it. November 5th, 2024 proved that. According to Pew, Trump's share of the black vote doubled from 8% in 2020 to 15% in 2024. 21% of black men, 10% of black women, the strongest showing for a Republican among black voters in, well, half a century. Some on the left call those numbers small, but small numbers don't cause big shockwaves. And this one, well, it most certainly did. Ask Kamala Harris if it felt small when she was forced to U-Haul her ass out of D.C. And now she's on tour with her new book, 107 Days, which amounts to around 320 pages of bullshit, but a book full of finger-pointing, blame-shifting, and revisionist history. She blames Trump. She blames the media. She probably blames Mercury for also being in retrograde. But the one group she doesn't dare to blame, black voters, because if she did, she'd have to admit a truth. Democrats can't afford to say out loud. The lock they've had on the black vote is breaking. And once you see that truth, once you see that you don't owe your vote to anyone, you don't go back. That's why this moment matters. That's why Family Matters exist. Because the conversation's actually happening in the black community the media ignores. The ones in barbershops, in churches, in our homes. They're not just revealing, but they're powerful. And they're changing the game. So how do we get here? Well, simple. Black Americans left the left. And on this show, you're going to hear from them. Well, most of them. We've got one person still holding on, but don't worry. We'll pray for them. Welcome to the family. Joining us now, we're going to hear from Audrey McNeal, a former Kamala Harris delegate to the DNC convention and now proud Trump supporter. Michaelah Montgomery, who is a critical piece of the puzzle in President Trump's resounding victory in the swing state of Georgia. And our favorite, the Democrat here on the panel today, Yemisi Egbowele. Did I say that right?
You did.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. There we go. Well, guys, first I want to start off with you, Audrey. You were a former Kamala Harris delegate, as I said. You were in Chicago. You were in the thick of it, right? All the shebang. But just months before the election, you left the left. You endorsed President Trump. What factored into that decision for you?
A lot of things had factor into that decision. Number one, I think that there should have been an open convention. I found it interesting that Kamala Harris wrote a book called 107 Days. Maybe it should be called 107 Excuses. And also, I just have one question for this book. How many hours does it take to organize an open convention? A lot of Democrats will say, why aren't there compelling candidates? Why, are we losing among young people? And I think a part of that is the elimination of talent, the elimination of competition. And that's what happens when you eliminate an open primary. And so a lot of my political shift to the right has just come from asking questions like, who is out the border? Who's guarding the border? Why is it that tens of millions of illegal immigrants have poured into our border? And why is that not defined as a crime in the Democratic Party? So a lot of things did factor into my decision, but I'm so proud to be on the right now, on the right side of things. So thank you so much for having me here.
Well, thank you for joining us. You hit on something there. You talked about a little bit about public safety. So black people want to be safe. Apparently that's controversial these days. We've been seeing from those on the left.
It is crazy that that's like a controversial statement. I actually really love what Caroline Leavitt said. She said that I understand that the previous administration had different opinions on this, but if you do come in this country as an illegal immigrant, you have committed a crime. And so I think that there's been this big push for a lot of black people to go and protest for illegal immigrants, but that's not actually something that is compelling to the black community. We want to be safe. We want our communities to thrive. We want to be successful. Those are the things that inspire the next generation of conservatives.
As a DNC delegate, you were kind of very much in the thick of it, in the quarters of this convention and in the back hallways. Were there people questioning the process about how Kamala Harris was nominated? Because I tried to get into the convention. You were lucky enough to get in.
Interesting.
They actually did a far better job at locking down that venue than they have ever attempted to do the border, which was interesting.
That's not true.
So were people saying that behind the scenes of the DNC, that they didn't think this was a democratic process and how she was made the nominee?
I'm not trying to ruin anyone's political career. I do have some friends that are on the left.
Name names. Name them.
Yeah, some of them.
When they say on Real Housewives, name them. Name them.
I think that we should direct attention to who are the people who are responsible for this. I think that the Democratic Party elite are responsible for choosing the nominee. She was anointed. She was not elected. And there's not one delegate, other than myself, that has come forward talking about the problematic way that she was almost made the president or presidential nominee who you potentially could be the president of this country. Like, this is not class president. This is not a game. This is not, something that's, trivial. This is a big deal. And so I'm surprised that not one delegate out of the 4,000 of us has come forward to say it is problematic that there was not an open convention.
Do you think there's a lack of courage to do that? Are they scared? Do you think they've been threatened? What's going on
I
there?
do think that there's a big pressure to toe the party line. And if you don't toe it, you're going to be pushed out. So I think a lot of conservatives are independently minded. They're a lot harder to control. I think it's because of their faith. I think it's because of their family, their community. But ultimately, I think in the Democratic Party, there was a lot of pressure. I think that there's just like a lack of free thinking, a lack of independent thought. And a lot of people don't realize there is a big overlap between independents and people who consider themselves center-right or conservative. So I think that's actually a really big deal and a cool thing to point out.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue to you, Michaelah. Michaelah, so you played a critical role in all the great things that happened in Georgia this past cycle. And you talked about free thinking earlier. No one's telling Michaelah Montgomery what to think. But you haven't always been a Republican. When did that change for you?
No, it actually changed for me in college. I was offered an internship with the GAGOP.
Yeah.
And as we're sitting there and we're discussing the issue of school choice, and we're discussing, the issue of abortion, and we're discussing the issue of immigration, I'm like, I don't see anything wrong with this. And the general misconception about Republicans, I think for everybody, is that Republicans are racist. Like, no matter what, growing up, you always hear that the Republican Party is the party for racists. And so it's like, I never thought to lean on this side, and you just automatically or subconsciously assume that everything coming out of the Republican Party is wrong. But then it's like, I don't believe in abortion. Like, I'm not necessarily a pro, yeah, girl, flush them and get back outside. Like, that's never been my thing. So, I don't judge people, but, personally to me, if access to abortion wasn't, accessible, if abortion wasn't accessible, I wouldn't care, So it's like, that would never be an issue to me that would drive me this way. When it came to school choice, I wholeheartedly believe that you should be able to go to the school that you choose to go to, especially if you're willing to pay taxes in that district. And it's like, growing up as Black people, we all knew somebody who had to use their auntie address so that their cousin could go to a better school, whether that be because the education being taught there or the way things were being taught there was subpar. It could have been for safety purposes because gang violence is rampant in a lot of Black neighborhoods, unfortunately. It could have been for a myriad of reasons. However, it's like, people were going to jail for that, And so when I'm hearing that Republicans are like, no, you should be able to go wherever you want your kid to go, I'm like, oh, I agree with that. And then, of course, when it comes to the issue of immigration, I'm like, just hearing all of the resources that were being made available to people who just made it over here. Like, if you can hop that fence, this is yours. Here is a prize. And it's like, wow. What about kids who age out of foster care? What about veterans who come back home from being in combat? What about single mothers who just need a leg up? Where is their, stimulus package that they just get because they did something? Imagine if every woman just got that because they got pregnant. We'd probably see a lot more people have babies. Imagine if, felons entering back into society got a stimulus package like that. We'd probably see a large decrease in recidivism. These people would not be going back to prison at the rate that they do if they were given the leg up that other criminals are given just because they came from somewhere else. Yeah. That just never made sense to me. So as I'm learning these things in my internship, because, I was always an independent thinker. I was on the debate team. Yeah. So you always have to be able to argue, the negative and the affirmative, and you have to be equally as strong on both sides if you want to win. And I was a winner. So...
And I think to point out, you went to an HBCU.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I was loud and proud about it. So it's like the culture that exists there now, where if you wear a MAGA hat on campus, I don't know if you guys just saw those kids go to Tennessee State University and get chased off campus. I can't imagine that because everybody loved me. We'd be in class and I was a poli-sci major, so everything we're talking about is politically related. And, I'm like, well, I'm the Republican in the room. And nobody was like, fuck you. Everybody was like, wow, that's very interesting. How did you get here? Right. And so it's like we would always be able to challenge each other's thoughts. And that's really what, siding with the party or getting involved in politics is. If you're going to find a solution, you have to be able to take criticism of your ideas, and you also have to be able to embrace new ideas. Everything can't be done your way because your way don't work for everybody. What they be saying, what's good for the goose ain't good for the gander. Whatever you old folks be saying, I'm not up there yet. But... But yes, I do think that it's very sad, and especially when you look at the recent passing of our cousin Charlie, it's like, dang, like just because you think different than a majority of the people there, like now your life could be in danger.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought him up because you said that, and this has been a big part of the left's fear-mongering tactic to keep black people, voting Democrat, is they perpetuate this narrative that all Republicans are racist. Many people said that in the wake of Charlie's murder. Let's not just call it a passing. Let's be clear-eyed about what happened there. He was assassinated. Many people sought to say that the reason they weren't upset or the reason, they weren't losing sleep over his death was because he was a racist. To people that say that Charlie Kirk was a racist, what do you say to those people?
I don't think so. And I think that everybody has the right to feel how they feel, and nobody should fear that their life is in danger because they feel a certain way. If we ever reach a point where in this world everybody is expected to think and feel the same way, that is very reflective of what we were warned about in George Orwell's 1984. Mm-hmm. And so I don't want that. And so I was a state director for Blexit for 3 years. And we merged with Turning Point during my tenure with Blexit. I met Charlie on multiple occasions, and not just being with Blexit/TPUSA, but also when I worked the campaign with President Trump. When I would go down to headquarters in Palm Beach, I would literally run into this man all the time. And he was always so nice to me, so respectful. He'll open doors for you, just a gentleman. And I just feel like somebody of that stature, people could argue, a lot of people, once they reach a certain level, they don't act like that, And so for him to still be humble in that way and show that humility towards somebody that apparently everybody claims you hate really speaks to his character. And so while I didn't always agree with everything that came out of his mouth, I can say that being with Blexit and telling other members, hey, I think this is kind of wild. They'd be like, well, think about it like this. And it's like, I understand for face value why a lot of black people would be upset at the things that he said. And I'm not going to make an excuse for some of the things that people think might be unforgivable. But what I will say is to generalize that man as a racist because you didn't understand where he was coming from is literally the root of the problem. And that in itself is where racism is rooted, is simply not understanding where somebody else is coming from. You hate somebody for no reason. So you don't understand why you hate them, and then you can't understand, what reason you would have to hate them. And then everything they say to you is bad, and yet it's because when you don't like somebody, you automatically, kind of shut them out, shut them down. Mm-hmm. And so I think when it comes to Charlie, people would hear their little sound bites like, oh, he said this about MLK, or oh, he said this about a pilot. And it's like, it wasn't just that, Mm-hmm. And it's like, and it's not always the message, but the messenger. And sometimes he just didn't word his things in a way that would be relatable to every audience that would hear him. But to, his core audience, to people who really understood him, to people who followed him, to people who, were fans of his, they understood him, which is why he has so many fans of different shades. If you go back and you watch him on tour at all these college campuses, there were a lot of black people who would come up and talk to him, and it'd be all respect at the end of the conversation. So much so that he probably turned a lot of people while on tour. And so it's like, we don't look at those clips, though. Those clips aren't viral. We just look at things that we know are going to ignite some sort of emotion into people who are already overly emotional. And that's just what they do on the left. That's what works for them. And I hate that that is overshadowing the work that he really did do. Because people don't know how hard it is to mobilize young people. People don't know how hard it is to get people to show up to an event. People don't know how hard it is to get folks to listen to you, to follow you, to believe in you. And Charlie did that. And he did that for all of us. And so for us to overshadow his legacy because we don't like a few clips that are in circulation, I think is a huge disservice to not just who he is as a person, but who we are as a people.
Yeah, my biggest beef with the entire Charlie Kirk is a racist thing is what they're citing as proof that he is a racist. They're saying, oh, he's anti-DEI, he must hate black people. I've never needed DEI to be successful.
Never.
They're saying, oh, he's anti-affirmative action, he must hate black people. I don't need affirmative action to thrive in this country, in the greatest country in the world. And so it's just like, so you're saying that because this man didn't believe that black people or blackness should be viewed as a disability, that he is the racist?
Absolutely.
Maybe you're the racist. Going back to your background, you're an HBCU grad. You are a black woman. You're also a single black mother and who works hard, does a lot of...
little baby. Sure do.
We love her. Kamala Harris tried to appeal directly to people just like you. She used identity politics in an attempt to do it. Why didn't that resonate with you? What made you feel as if it was fugazi, that it wasn't authentic? What made you see through it all?
Because I went to an HBCU, and when Kamala Harris came to HBCUs, her messaging was very specific. She would never go to Morehouse, she would never come to Clark, but she always went to Spelman. And her message to Spelmanites was always abortion, abortion, abortion. You need abortion. If you don't get an abortion, you won't be successful. And then her being a woman who had never birthed a child, she's the perfect model to go around and say no kids equals success. And I think that one of the issues that comes with being a mom, or one of the issues that a lot of women battle with when they're making that decision as to whether or not they're going to go through with becoming a mother, is, dang, there's all these stigmas against being a single mother. There's, not a lot of resources for single mothers. And then it's if it doesn't slow you down, you don't have to worry about childcare, you don't have to worry about a babysitter, none of those things. And so it's people unfortunately think that kids equal a burden, kids equal a hindrance. Baby, I'm living breathing proof that a baby don't stop nothing. If anything, the baby opened way more doors for me than I can imagine, because people don't tell her no. All right, you might think you want to tell me no, but you ain't gonna tell my baby no. What are you talking about? My baby at 4 years old had the president of the United States and the vice president, I mean, they weren't elected yet, but we knew it was coming, grabbing her Cheetos from backstage because she was pissed that they shut down the concessions like they do when the president shows up, because she was on her way to get some Cheetos. So she goes back there, we're back there to take our picture. She just, And then JD, cousin Jadarius, is like, yo, what's wrong? And then she goes, I want my Cheetos. And then Trump goes, Cheetos? And then JD goes, I think we can do that. And then he runs backstage behind some curtains. You hear some shuffling. Comes back out. He got Cheetos for the baby. What are you talking about? Okay, that's an experience that I would have never They wouldn't have did that for me. I wouldn't have never thought to ask them for Cheetos. So it's just I just feel for the women who feel like they can't do it. Yeah. Because there's so many avenues in which you can do it. And I think that was the message that she unfortunately was promoting. Mm-hmm. And for a lot of Black people, unfortunately, a lot of us were raised in single-parent households. Yeah. So it's you can't sit here and tell me that I can't do it. An abortion is going to fix all my problems, because I'm here and I watched my mom work her ass off to do this, and this, and she's the most amazing person that I know. Yeah. So it's even if on the surface, it sounds like good messaging, right? Because people still showed up to her rallies and they supported her. Subconsciously, you cannot relate to the things that she's talking about, because for a lot of us, that means you wouldn't be here. So you can't preach abortion to a bunch of young women who know single mothers, who were raised by single mothers, who may be single mothers, and think that this is something that matters to them. No, what matters to them is, why do I feel like I need an abortion in the first place? Why can't I afford groceries? And why would it be harder for me if I had a kid? Why can't I afford to pay my rent? And why would it be harder for me if I had a kid? Why can't I find childcare? And why would it be harder for me if I had a kid? Those are the things that she should have been tackling, and perhaps she would have won over more people. But to just say that the existence of a child itself is going to hinder you from ever being successful, and of course, her being the model point of it, not having any children of her own, it's wow, you really hate us. Because when you really think, down to the truth of it all, the root of it all, we abort 50% of our population. And so it's Black people, population-wise, we've remained stagnant for the past 60 years. And it's again, I can address the issue. So I understand why women are aborting their children, but at the same time, it's those reasons why are the things we should be paying attention to. And that's why Trump won, because that's what he paid attention to. Trump did talk about the grocery prices. Trump did talk about paying rent. Trump went ahead and said, if you got a baby, I'll give you $1,000. What are you talking about? These are the things that appeal to young people. The thought of the American dream isn't just working every day of your life and have a lot of money, because you got to work every day. You can't even enjoy your money. The American dream is to have a family, to be at home, the white picket fence, the dog, the 2 kids, boy, girl, a little buckhead bundle. That's what people want. People don't want to hear that I'm supposed to be by myself for the rest of my life. You can't preach that, you don't need men. You can't be over here blaming men for everything, because now you're creating this militia of women who are anti-men. Yeah. We don't like that. I want me a man. Hey, y'all. Oh, I'm just saying, but you cannot go and this is your messaging, that you can do it all by yourself. You should strive to do it, and look at me. Yeah. Because think about it, you never saw her husband on tour with her. Never.
Not
She
Dougie? Dougie?
When did you ever
He
see
was in the
her?
background
Dougie.
sometimes.
I see
Dougie.
Dougie.
You know,
Did you see Dougie like you see Melania? Yes or no?
Well,
Exactly.
yes,
Thank
yeah.
you. She kept that man in the background, in the cut, in the closet where he belonged because she wasn't going to win with that.
Maybe
Her
she's a
messaging
sneaky
was-
link. Why you got to blow up her spot like that? I know that
I
you
already
are, I know that
did.
you were
I said ask
I know that
Mrs.
you were,
Willie Brown.
You're chopping out the bit over there. What's your reaction to kind of what you've heard thus far? But you were a senior official in the Biden White House. If there is one single person that Kamala Harris blames the most in this interesting book, it's Joe Biden. It's your boss, your former boss. What's your response to that?
I think a lot of the conversation that she has about President Biden has to do a lot with their teams and a lot of the conflicting relationships between them. Look, every president and vice president has a complex relationship, right? I think, Pence and Trump are probably the first example I think about that. But also Obama and Biden had their own difficult relationship, right? Obama, a new senator, brings in Joe Biden, seasoned legislator, to kind of work with Congress. So when I read the book, I saw it and I thought, yes, I can see how a lot of the things she was talking about with certain topics that she was given to have to cover as a vice president, with certain wins that she had that we did not always promote. Look, I worked in the Biden admin as a senior advisor in the Legislative Affairs Office, but then also in the press office as Karine Jean-Pierre's chief of staff. And so I know that there were certain wins that she was having and certain things that she was working on, especially in the area of foreign policy, that we didn't always bring to the table. And I think Ron Klain, Biden's first chief of staff, said it best, like, we did not do the best job of promoting her. And so, look, I totally own everything she says in the book because it's her story and it's her narrative to get to decide. Here we are all talking about it. And my thing is like, okay, if we get to talk about it, then doesn't she get to talk about it as well? Hillary Clinton loses the 2016 election. I was in Pennsylvania working during the Clinton time. She writes a book called What Happened. That book really tears into a lot of the Democratic operatives and elites, which is kind of funny coming from Clinton. But I think if Clinton gets to write a book called What Happened, let's let Harris write her book 107 Days. Here's what I'm thankful for. The book is coming out now. Midterms are a year from now. So I'm not as worried as much about that book. I think that President Biden still has a book that's got to come out, and I'm hoping that comes out a little bit before the midterm so we give ourselves some breathing room and we kind of like get to put to rest a little bit of the Biden-Harris admin.
That is interesting.
There's a lot of, oftentimes allegations targeted to those on the right about the tokenization of black people, right? That black conservatives are just nothing more than tokens, black faces to, perpetuate conservative ideals and whatnot. One of Kamala Harris's biggest things that she makes clear in this book is that she felt as if she was underutilized. And as you acknowledged there, that she was not promoted enough. Her wins were not promoted enough. So was she a token in the Biden White House? Was she just a black face to Joe Biden's progressive ideals?
Biggest mistake that President Biden made when he was choosing a vice president is that he made a promise that he would make it a black woman, right? And so now the conversation becomes about her identity and not about her qualifications and her merit, right? DA for California, fifth largest economy in the world, did not just come up out of anywhere, from her own right, had worked in the Senate, and now she's picked because he made a promise to Jim Clyburn and the Congressional Black Caucus, whoever, backdoor deals. And it sets the precedent that she's operating out of what she identifies as. And I think that was always going to be a handicap. And I kind of wish, look, I didn't attend an HBCU. I didn't work for Congressional Black Caucus members when I worked in the Senate. I worked for Senator Mark Warner, Senator Amy Klobuchar. Minnesota is about as wide as you can get.
Yeah. Did she ever throw a stapler at you or no?
No, she did not. And let me tell you something. Good. I have no problem with a woman who knows what she wants and wants perfection at the first time. Yeah. So I think if you can't handle a white woman with attitude, then maybe you shouldn't work in Congress.
My thing, it's funny that you say that. When I heard that Sheila Jackson Lee recording, do you know the one I'm talking about where she was going off on that man named Jerome?
Yeah.
I was like, at the end of the day, some people just aren't competent and you got to go off every now and then. People were like, oh, like, how can she talk about like this if he wasn't doing his job?
Yeah. I mean,
and, he's making taxpayer dollars. Look at her.
Also, just as I know, there's like 300 resumes put in for every one job on the Hill. Like in no matter what, in any office, like everybody wants to get in on the Hill.
Competitive.
Yeah. So if you can't do the job, then get somebody else to do it.
Yeah.
But I also think it was interesting what we were talking about, how there might be this big difference between someone like a Kamala Harris and someone like a Hillary Clinton. I actually think that Hillary Clinton stood on her ideals, and I think that, I fundamentally disagree with a lot of things coming out of the Democratic Party right now, but I think it's interesting that she was someone who was able to stand up on her 2 feet. I think there was a very interesting moment in the 2016 election where that one person asked, like, oh, can you guys say something nice about each other? This was in the debate between Trump and Hillary. And it's interesting that even Trump said, Hillary, I disagree with her fundamentally, but she's a fighter. And I think that the American people actually respected someone who could stand up on their own 2 feet and actually give an argument and defend their ideas. Kamala Harris, her specifically, had nothing to do with her race, had nothing to do with her background. She, in particular, was a bad candidate, I think. I don't think she was ready to run for office. I think that a primary actually would have strengthened her. And if she could have won, it could have proved that she was fit to be in office and to, run a good campaign, but she wasn't. And so I actually think these things make you stronger. They don't make you weaker. Debate makes you stronger, right? Doing any kind of election makes you stronger. Winning an election makes you stronger. So we respect winners. It's another thing with even Charlie Kirk. He was able to win debates. He was able to win people over. And I actually remember when Kirk was at the DNC, he came just to listen, just to learn. And he was very slow to anger. He was very patient. He was very forgiving. And he did not know that maybe someone like me was standing in his vicinity, watching and listening to what he was saying, thinking, you know what, actually, I am a conservative. Actually, I do agree with a lot of the things that you're saying, but I just haven't gotten to hear it. Maybe because, I don't know, it's some stuff on YouTube. I mean, even Fox News said this, that certain Google YouTube videos have been removed because of censorship and things like that. But I think that debate makes you stronger. But also, I'm curious, what you guys think about, strong, quote unquote, women who maybe could have stood out on their own 2 legs? Do you think that Kamala Harris should have leaned into her own identity more? Do you think that?
Well, I think she did that.
Yeah, right.
She did that a lot.
I guess that is the problem.
She was going to make history. I think even the back of the book.
Right.
I think you have right here. The little black girl is looking at the stage, and I think
true.
it's a pretty iconic photo. I think it's a very powerful
It is a
image.
shot.
I know who helped set up that shot.
Yeah.
Just interesting to hear about your whole experience going to the convention. I was at the convention as well, helped run media operations. And to hear you go from delegate to now, and those are the kind of stories that I think the Democratic Party is grappling with, the shifting focus of a lot of folks. I mean, we talked about the shifting focus of black Dems to black Republicans, but also you touched a little bit on Gen Z. And I remember at the convention, there was this kind of little portal hub lounge hangout for influencers.
Yes. Oh my
Nothing
gosh.
makes me cringe more than a Democratic influencer. Nothing makes me
So you're not a fan of Harry Sisson, and it's a good friend.
I just think they're all made in kind of the same
lab.
Yeah, in the same
Probably.
lab, and they come
Biologically
out
constructed.
and they all kind of repeat the same things.
Yes.
And so I don't get it, but
Also just the celebrities, the celebrity culture. They thought that they had all the people with all of the followers, but really they needed people who had some currency in their own communities.
Yeah.
People actually like the delegates who were school teachers or, what have you, that a lot of them moved to the conservative movement. A lot of Gen Z moved to the conservative movement. And so I do think it's interesting that they had this big celebrity culture trying to, influence the culture.
yeah, let me tell
it
you,
didn't work.
celebrities will. I was on America's Newsroom this morning on Fox News with Bill Hemmer, and he was talking about the cost of the Harris campaign. And, I said she did the best she could, yada yada yada. But one thing I wanted to say was celebrities will be the death of the Democratic Party, and I myself am a victim of feeding into the fervor and you remember being in that arena, the energy,
Yes.
and just feeling like, oh my gosh, can we do this? Can we actually do this? Can we put somebody in? And Nancy Pelosi's in the back, and she's like, I want an open primary, and we're all like, Nancy, shut up! I think we got this. I think we got this. Narrator, they did not. We didn't. But all of the celebrity, one after the other, the rumors, is Beyonce here? Is she backstage? And then, of course, Beyonce comes out later.
I remember that she didn't
for
come.
campaign.
I
I know, but that was the rumor.
We were like,
that rippled
right, exactly.
all
We were like, oh,
day.
she's coming
Everybody's
today.
texting each other.
So
Right.
was that rumor ever real? Was she actually ever
not.
planned?
No.
DNC.
She had never had any plans. People were checking private plane flight plans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was talking to
Exactly.
Mignon Clyburn, who was the DNC
Right.
chair. I was just
Yeah.
like, Mignon,
Is he
blink
coming?
twice.
Yeah,
Let me
yeah.
know. I ran into
Yeah,
Westmore. I
yeah.
said, Beyonce, do you know? Because if anybody's going to know, maybe you would know.
Yeah.
Right.
But this idea that the people who are pop culture, the people who are the icons, are the same people who have influence is wrong. And going back to Democratic influencers, we have seen that the people who sometimes make the most impact are people like Charlie Kirk, are people who, like who's Tim Pool. There are people who saw something like a podcast, saw YouTube and said, I think I'm going to try that. And they did it years before the rest of us caught on. Now, if you're starting a podcast, some say that you're a little bit behind.
Yeah. Literally. Yeah. I know. What's going on around here?
God.
Glad you caught up, Z.
Well, we need a medic. I've been making videos since I was 12 years old.
I know you're
you know.
ahead of the game on
God forbid.
connecting with the internet.
I've actually been, this is probably against my best interest now, but I've always said, I think Trump, if we're putting tariffs on everything, we need to put tariffs on podcast mics. Because some of the things I've seen,
Take it off the bundles, put it on the mic.
Exactly. The bundles.
Take it off the bundles.
You live in Atlanta. Are there? How is that impacting? The sew-in market there. Are we seeing less bust downs? What's
I
going
live
on?
here now, and those of y'all who know me also know that y'all
That's a
see
dodge.
me.
What's going on? What's going on?
Because Atlanta got a lot going on right now. But I miss my city dearly. I love you guys. But I usually wear my natural hair, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
But I didn't see people weren't taking to the streets like, oh my God, I can't afford to sew in this month. The price of my frontal done doubled. I wasn't hearing any of that. I don't think that all of the fears that the left was trying to push on us with these, you hear 100% tariff, you automatically assume the price of everything is about to double. And we didn't see that.
That could have been a Democratic strategy. They could have said, bundles. That's
so
going to be the
what?
biggest.
You're joking about that, but they actually would say that. And they would run out about that.
Yeah.
They would have.
And they would have Jasmine Crockett at the forefront,
Not
there's so
wig.
many
My
things
bad.
that were
Wig.
Can I say that?
condescending. with that.
I saw Jasmine Crockett last night. It's not often I get to be in the same room as Miss Crockett, but I wasn't close enough to say hello, unfortunately. But I did meet her deputy chief, and I hope.
I know him.
Yeah. Derek is that his name?
I want to say it's there. I just know Laura Loomer has beef with him right now.
Yes. Oh, yeah, that was interesting.
I saw that online.
Yeah. Well, they are certainly
she's
going
something else.
They are certainly going after it. Earlier on, I think you kind of talked about the messaging crisis, and you've been talking about this a lot on Fox and different networks. What do you think that actually? Why does that even exist? For me, I think that when you have Democrats who are latching onto this trans issue and things like, defending the mutilation of children's genitals and even entertaining the idea of litter boxes in elementary schools and middle schools. And it's actually kind of crazy. I'm 23 years old. I was in high school just, a few years ago. The idea that there were litter boxes in my high school is actually fucking insane, to be quite frank. And I'm just how did we get there? But a lot of Democrats have defended that. Why? And do you think that's been a contributing factor to why they are failing to connect with the Black community at the levels that they once did?
I think we're going to see a shift in messaging from Democrats, especially my blue dogs, my centrists, my moderates. One big example of that, especially when we're talking about trans issues, right? Trans rights, kids in schools. Abigail Spanberger, Winsome Sears, the gubernatorial race in Virginia right now. Winsome Sears, Black woman, immigrant from Jamaica. I was born in Jamaica, so I see her. I know her. I feel her. Lieutenant Governor to Glenn Youngkin. Glenn Youngkin, highly popular Republican governor, has done such a good job, made inroads in the Commonwealth. Winsome Sears has used the trans issues in schools to push against Abigail Spanberger constantly, again and again and again and again.
Yeah.
Abigail Spanberger has, to her credit, not taken the bait. She has said politics should remain out of schools. Parents should make the decisions for their children. And she is focused on the economy. She is completely focused on, like you were talking about, grocery store prices, gas prices. What are your monthly utilities, the monthlies? She's focused on the fact that 3 rural hospitals in Southwest Virginia closed because of Medicaid cuts. She is all about what's happening at the kitchen table. And that, to me, is a prime example of how you counteract and combat a lot of people losing their interest in the Democratic Party. I think Abigail Spanberger will gain voters, which she already did because she represented a district that had historically been Republican, north of Richmond, Fredericksburg. She's going to gain voters in a way that Winsome Sears will not if she doesn't pivot from the culture war. If Democrats refuse to participate in a culture war, then there isn't. Right.
Interesting.
Right. Because everything Republicans do, everything you talk about is in response to what Dems are doing. So if you are a Democrat that just ceases, says, okay, I won't do it, then there's nothing to participate in. And I think she's a really, really great example. Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey, too. They're more focused on like the energy costs in New Jersey. But yeah.
Yeah. So, Michaelah, your response to that, at the end of the day, training children, defending biological men and women's sports isn't really exciting black voters. Should I be a surprise to
No,
folks?
not at all. And I also feel like, to your point, in regards to dodging it, I understand how that might be a great thing, but it's still something that we have to address. And I think that because since the Obama years, we have embraced the LGBTQIA community so much and given them so much visibility to where now, like, I don't think you guys can ignore the issue, because if you try to, you'll have these groups of people protesting at your rallies, protesting at the polls, saying that, you don't care about their kids, or you are preventing them from doing this, or you're not, honoring them or addressing them, acknowledging them, whatever the case may be. So I think it's an unfortunate space for the Democrats to be in, to where the issue has gotten so bad to where you have people in the party who don't agree with it, but they can't speak out against it because you might lose a lot of support. And I think that it's kind of sad that branch of the community who doesn't even represent the majority, black, white, Asian, whoever, they don't represent the majority, have so much power in determining how somebody does something. Like, you might not want Drag Queen Story Hour, but you can't outlaw it or say it can't happen or ignore the issue, because if you ignore the issue, you'll have parents that are mad at you because you allowed it to happen. If you don't allow it to happen, you'll have parents that are mad at you because where is your, love of inclusivity, and, where's the tolerance? And so for black voters, we've never been about that. Like, it's unfortunate, but there was a point in time where being gay wasn't even safe in the black community. And so while thankfully we have gotten out of that headspace to where now we just treat humans like humans, the issue is the left couldn't just leave it at that. We had already gotten to a point where it's like, we know that treating people differently is wrong. Making fun of people is wrong. Singling people out because of their differences, their disabilities, whatever, is wrong. And yet, for whatever reason, once they got the right to marry, it's like, hey, everything's got to be gay. Like, we all remember, you never saw men kissing on TV as much as you do now. It was never a thing until post the Obama years. Like, I don't know why we ushered in this major agenda, but now it's such a big part of what the Dems are doing. It's easy for black people to turn a blind eye to everything else you guys are doing, because when it comes to our kids, we don't play about our kids. We are very big on protecting our kids. A lot of black people grew up with folks who weren't allowed to go to sleepovers. We all knew black people who couldn't go outside, didn't have phones, couldn't get on the internet. Black people do not play about their kids. And so if all you see on TV is all this gay stuff, and you didn't want your kid to see that, if all you hear about in policy is like, we gotta, do this for the gays and we gotta do this for the LGBT community, you don't want that for your kid. If somebody comes to the parent PTA meeting and they bring a book about masturbation that's sitting on a bookshelf in an elementary school, yes, we have a problem with that. Because another issue that I don't think the left really thought about is, unfortunately, you do have a lot of victims of sexual abuse that exist in the black community, and a lot of them are silent voices. And so when you're doing things that come after children, that is reminiscent of the abuse they suffered through as a child as well. And all it looks like to us is you are opening the doors to make adults be more comfortable with kids and kids be more comfortable with adults in ways that should not be happening. And it's not natural. It is not okay. And that is one of the main reasons why a lot of black people are walking away from the Democratic Party. And while you have a lot of them who aren't necessarily participating in Democratic politics as much, but they, just can't get with the Republicans because they still believe that we're racist, or they just hate Trump that much that they can't. But now they're sitting out of your elections. They're not showing up to anything because they're like, I can't get with this. And now you guys have to run candidates who either get with the script, like you said, you either, get with the program or you get kicked out of the program. People see that. And it's like, you guys need a more diverse thought within the party. You guys need folks who are okay with saying, hey, I'm a liberal, but I don't go this far. Like, I do believe we should leave children alone. Somebody needs to be brave enough to say that. If the Democrats got somebody brave enough to say that, you guys might win something next year or 2 years from now. But nobody's saying that. And that's why it's easy for Republicans to come in and sweep, because the one issue you can always bring everybody together on, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of political affiliation, is children.
It's real.
A super fair point. And I think if you had to ask a lot of Democrats, like, what does the DNC stand for? What does the Democratic Party stand for? A lot of them probably could not tell you, like, to this day. And I think that's also an issue with the Democratic messaging. And apart from that, I think if people were to listen to the Conservative Party, I think a lot of people are coming from a place of love and compassion when it comes to the transgender ideology issue, especially for people under the age of 18. Like, chances are, if you are undergoing, like, a surgery that's pretty permanent when you're, like, 16 or 15 years old, that's not going to be something that's popular for the majority of the country. But also, it just doesn't make sense. You don't have to be like a Christian. You don't have to be like on any kind of religious grounds to come to that conclusion. Like, you could really just be a normal person and say, like, you know what, doing certain things like this that are so permanent is probably problematic if you're doing that so young. And so, outside of DEI, outside of like the LGBTQ or transgender issues, like, what does the Democratic Party stand for? A lot of people don't know. Which I think they need to fix that with their messaging.
It's going to be a rebuild year.
We're
rebuilding.
Lots to rebuild. We got New Jersey on the horizon for you guys. Of course,
Yeah.
Virginia, very important elections to round out the year. So I guess we'll see.
I
happens,
wonder, in the book, she talks about not picking Pete. And one of the big dividers.
Is that homophobic to you that she didn't choose him because he was a gay man?
No, it's real. It's realistic. I mean, I'm from Georgia. I'm from the suburbs.
Yeah.
Cobb County. I always
Augusta
think.
over here.
Yeah. Okay.
Kennesaw.
Lots of. Oh my gosh. Lots
I
of
lived
Georgia.
in Atlanta for 10 years, but I was a Fulton County girly. I was.
Okay, so we're all from Georgia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can say it. We know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
no,
we know.
Yeah, he's not.
He
I
would.
mean, to me, the funniest thing that I have watched is when she wrote that, like, Black people went, well, yeah. Why would you? Yeah. You're already at a disadvantage 107 days. Why would you pick something harder to add to it?
Well, it's also, too, I think Stephen A., he talked about that, in a podcast recently. He was like, Pete Buttigieg, he's polling at 0% with
0%,
Black people.
0%.
He's like, I can't tell you why, but we all know why.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we all know why.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that he feels as if, of course, this is Disney, ESPN, Stephen A. Of course, he has, guardrails there, but, there is a very real situation that she had to confront. The question I think that a lot of white liberals are asking is that consistent with her ideology, right? A lot of people are saying that she should hope that she could have made the American people rise to the occasion.
Oh gosh, I'm so over.
These are your folks.
People will meet you where you are.
This is gang.
CJ's so messy.
It's a big tent party, and you're always going to have people in your tent, Republican or Democrat, that you're just like, if you could be quiet for a second.
Do you think those people have Black friends?
White liberals?
The ones that are saying that that the American people would have risen, the Black community would have just accepted people.
No, I don't think they know Black people.
Yeah.
I don't think that.
There we go. We're from the top rope.
No, yeah. It feels like talking to a wall sometimes when you're trying to explain to people, like, what happens in a church, what happens in a barber shop, yes, you can know people who are loving and accepting, and also they could be like, well, he was in the cabinet, and I think that's good. I think that's progress. Just stop trying to push people past where they are, meet them where they are.
Yeah.
And that's like just, I think, such a firm belief of politics, and why politics is so great when it's local is that if you live in a deep blue city like a New York City, and we can talk about Zoran on another podcast episode, Zoran's your dem, Zoran's your guy. If you live in somewhere like a Richmond, Virginia, or you live in like an Atlanta suburb, maybe it looks like more of like a Lucy McBath, a John Ossoff, a Warnock. So I think that you just have to adjust to where people are. And as a nation, if we're running the table, if we're looking at the Electoral College, Pete wasn't going to pull his weight. And what is the point of having a white man if he doesn't pull his weight?
Ooh, she said it, not us. All right. We're not gonna get in trouble.
We're getting into the tea.
That's
Oh,
my belief. That's my philosophy in all of
my God.
life. Why are you here?
Michaelah?
I mean, I'm just saying, if you are gonna bring the white boy, you got to bring the cleanest, coolest white boy around. You can't bring a gay
You mean
boy.
Jadarius Vance?
That's why we got Jadarius. I'm just saying, but like, they didn't want Buttigieg. They wanted Shapiro. Like, they wanted Newsom. Like, she would have done better if she had given one of them a chance. And I mean, she still would have lost, but it's like, it wouldn't have been such an embarrassment.
I actually think Shapiro would have been, and this is the fault of a lot of far left, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar. I actually think Shapiro would have brought his own issues too.
Definitely at the debate. Definitely in the debate.
So it's like,
he
they
would've done
didn't
better.
listen to the people. So it's like, they went ahead and got, they rejected their DEI hire.
I guess you
like,
could say
now
that
they're
was-
mad at us, but they rejected their DEI hire.
So if not Pete, and Tim was basically kind of gay. So like, I don't understand. When you look at who could it have been? Like, if not Tim, if not Pete.
I guess that was their
But
original
Shapiro, you have
sin.
the, you have the
Shapiro
anti-Israel
should have been.
faction.
Yeah, with the
yeah,
Ilhan Omar,
that
but
was
Rashida
awesome.
Tlaib.
So-
That's a
Okay.
difficulty.
He's Jewish, so they hate the Jews now.
Oh, okay, yeah, never mind. That wouldn't have went over well.
So
But-
who would you have picked if you could choose anyone?
If I could
To
have
salvage the
chosen
ticket.
anyone to be her VP, I mean, I would have maybe gone with a JB Pritzker or, well, listen, I wouldn't have wanted him to be her VP because I want him to be the guy. Andy Beshear in Kentucky, governor of Kentucky.
Yeah.
Very high approval rating, one of the highest approval ratings of governors across the nation.
Flipped a red state.
Flipped a
Right.
red state, and
Proof
not
that he can
like
compete.
yeah, and not like like Virginia goes back and forth, North
Yeah.
Carolina, Georgia.
Yeah.
We have fun with those states. Kentucky is
BT
Kentucky.
Cameron, who's a friend
Yeah.
of mine and a very good candidate, very good fundraiser.
Very good candidate.
Very well spoken, all the things, like checks all the boxes, but still was able to best him in that race.
Yeah, and that
of
was,
course
like,
it was
a
on the
word.
backdrop of the Dobbs decision and all that, but still
Yeah.
crazy to do in Kentucky.
Yeah, very measured. If you have not seen the Vogue piece with him and his wife,
They say Vogue is the obituary for anyone who ever runs for president. Beto O'Rourke did, of course, the magazine cover.
yeah, Beto O'Rourke also live streamed his dental appointment. Okay,
Yeah.
there was a lot more there with him.
He was endorsed by Beyonce.
Funny that that Beto O'Rourke has come up, because I think this is actually funny. I've seen a lot of Democrat operatives who've been attacking Kamala Harris for writing this book, and honestly, I really do feel like it is 320 pages of like the longest crash out I've ever read. But at the same time, though, Beto O'Rourke has lost campaign after campaign after campaign, and they keep running him. Now, there is much commentary on the internet that I have made about white privilege. I don't think that it's necessarily the most preeminent thing in the world. However, if I were to define white privilege, it would be someone running again and again and again and again, losing again and again and again and again, somehow managing to still raise millions of dollars, and they keep letting him do it. And so my question is that going back to the initial question I asked you, was Kamala Harris a token in the Biden White House? Why does she not get a pass from some of these white liberals? And Beto O'Rourke, whose name is not Beto, his name is Robert, why does he get a pass every single time?
Because
Robert Francis, by the way. I don't know anything.
oh my gosh, that's his Christian name, full government name.
I do my research.
That's interesting.
Because white people get to be losers. They get to be losers and they get to try again, and try again. And you were all raised in households where your parents told you get one shot. How people interpret you when they first meet you as a person of color is what they're going to believe about you as a person of color. And everything you do in your life is to be the antithesis of whatever the stereotype that they've created for you. And so Beto gets to, well, he says, he's won some things because he was in Congress, but Texas is a tough.
He was in Congress like a decade ago.
Yeah, Texas is a tough state, and I think he's already getting outpaced. Like James Talrico in Texas is gaining and becoming more interesting than him. I mean, he really jumped into the I'm a politician. I'm also your friend, and I'm chronically online, and I just don't think it worked out. Speaking to the Democratic operatives that you touched on that have trashed her, very important to note: a lot of y'all are anonymous. Put your name to it. Say it with your chest.
Name him.
Name them.
right. Be brave.
Yeah. And then the ones that are speaking, I'm just like, but why? Like David Axelrod, who has run off of this idea he created, Barack Obama. A lot of white Democratic operatives have run off and made careers looking at other podcasts, mic hosts like Crooked Media over there have created entire careers and personas off the idea that they worked for Barack Obama, they wrote for Barack Obama, right? They were his speechwriters. They created this idea of Barack Obama is Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He could have had any staffer in the world.
I think you have to give credit where it's due.
Yeah,
like
that
he's
man,
an
that
incredible
man
speaker.
was gonna be influential and make something of himself. Rahm Emanuel did not create him. David Axelrod did not create him. So a lot of these same folks who then feel that they can turn around and critique Harris because they have somehow created this cornerstone and bedrock foundation within Barack Obama. They didn't create anything. Yeah. They've run off of and grifted off of the first black president. And they think that then entitles them to critique the first black woman to run. And it doesn't. Yeah. And I think that we also, in the Democratic Party, right, we're seeing a shift of politicians, right, the Biden era leaving, but we also need to see a shift of the strategists that we have used in the past, the ones that have hung around since 2008, since we were all really grasping with this idea of politics. The same people have been running the messaging on it, and it's time for them to go.
Well, so for you to say all that, one sec. So for you to say all that, if that's how white Democrats treat black people, why should we vote for them 90% of the time?
That is how some white Democrats.
It sounded like many people you were naming. Many people.
In elite liberal spaces inside the Beltway, as we say, inside the swamp. And we're all swampy people.
I'm from Augusta.
We're all swampy people.
I'm from Kennesaw. I don't know what you're talking about.
There's a golf course there. I don't know about a swamp.
I grew up in Las Vegas. I never saw a swamp.
That's so funny.
I don't know nothing about water.
The person who gave the closest thing to the autopsy of the 2024 election was actually Hunter Biden. He was saying that none of these elites, like evil Axelrod, none of these elites really know what it's like to talk to black voters from the South. They have no idea what it's like to campaign to people from South Carolina. They had no idea what they were doing. They're from San Francisco or the heart of New York, smack dab in the middle of Manhattan where I went to school. And these people do not know anything about the quote unquote flyover states or the South or what people actually want.
And that's one thing about Hunter Biden. That man got into the community. He was in strip clubs. He was doing crack cocaine off of people's stoves. He was out and about. In places you would never see a president's son. He was out and about.
Yeah,
he was evangelical in his approach.
He went everywhere. Just like Trump went everywhere.
He was engaged.
Trump and him didn't go the same places. They didn't go the same places.
That's fair. That's fair.
But to your point, Trump really did engage the everyday person a lot better than
McDonald's.
the left
right.
did. Yes.
I was genius.
Chick-fil-A. What are y'all talking about?
Yes.
Hello. But anyway, it's you don't see that on the left, and it's there was the attempt, Kamala and her husband went to go get Doritos from the gas station. She's like, "Hey, Dougie," I remember that, and it was like, what is this? Oh yeah, he was there one time. Woo! But
sometimes you got to bring him out just so they feel good. They feel good.
The Doug was there less than Melania.
He was definitely.
These thing is quite empty, but all right.
But
fair amount.
Trump brought on the everyday podcasters, and Trump was really reposting folks' videos who might only have 300 followers. How did he even see this? And then even now, when we look at how the White House is putting out their memes and whatnot,
funny.
it's you guys are very much in tune with what's going on the ground.
Credit due to the digital game of the White House. I will say, knowing the internals of the Biden White House, the approval process to just post a fact sheet. I'm not even talking about a video, y'all. Just a fact sheet, and we've got to get away from fact sheets.
No one's reading them.
Nobody's reading the fact sheet.
The
approval process was crazy. It's 10 emails, and it's I look at some of the stuff Trump puts out, and it's just I think it, therefore I do, and people are really responsive to that.
Yeah. Well, it seems as if it's probably easier to get a pardon in the Biden White House via AutoPen.
That's
than
what
it
I'm
was
saying.
to
Yeah. Where was he the entire time? I don't know. That's probably why there was 10 emails he wasn't there. Might be hard to reach him.
I love it. Well, guys,
you can bring Jeff Seinstein to talk about the AutoPen.
Let me know. Let me know. We'll be in touch. Well, guys, I want to thank you all. Audrey, thank you so much. Michaelah, Yemisi, thank you so much. Guys, thank you for tuning in to the first episode of Family Matters. As you can see, there are so many incredible perspectives here in the Black community that you're going to hear from each and every week. Black conservative voices. Also, occasionally our favorite Democrats will stop by and join us to spar with us a little bit. But again, this is exactly what the mainstream media was missing by not actually going to Black churches, going to Black barbershops, and actually talking to the people that are at the forefront of this change in the community. Each and every week, we'll see you here. Talk to you soon.